away from the microphone so you can be heard, and please ensure all mobile devices are now switched to silent. Before we kick into our meeting, I'd now like to invite Joe Fergus from our recovery team to open up our meeting with a karakia.
E tū tātou. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa pounamu te moana. Hei huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Aruha atu, aruha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa. Haumi e, hui e, tai ki e, e noho. Whakapākiatanga, the translation of that is, may peace be widespread, may the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all this day. Let us show respect for each other, for one another, bind us all together. Morena tātou, ko Joe Fergus tōku ingoa, he kamaihi aho I te rōpū whakatika, I te kurupari, ka pirieri, he tangata tiriti aho. My name is Joe Fergus. I work in the cyclone recovery team. Morena.
Thank you, Joe, and a well-chosen karakia to open proceedings today. I'd now like to move on to item 1, which is apologies and leaves of absence. We have previously granted leave of absence for Councillor Jessup. Also, Councillor Hiki has informed us of an early departure at 11:45, and we have apologies for lateness from Ms. Sandra. She is on her way. Are there any other requests for leave or apologies? No? Can I please have a mover? Thank you, and a seconder. So thank you, Councillor Watkins. Thank you, Councillor Apatu. I'll now put that motion. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried. We'll now move on to item 2, which is conflicts of interest, and I'd just like to remind committee members to please declare any conflicts as we proceed through the agenda. You can raise them at the time of each item coming up. Moving now on to item 3, confirmation of minutes. The minutes from the Strategy and Recovery Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 27th of August, have been previously circulated. Do we have any questions or comments regarding those minutes? No, thank you. Can I have a mover and a seconder for those? Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Thank you, Councillor Dixon. I'll now put those. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried. We'll now move on to item 4, and I'd like to welcome Mr. Carter to present this item. Before he proceeds, though, I'd just like to remind committee members that myself and Councillor Harvey are board advisors on the Hastings City and Havelock North Business Associations. I've checked with our legal counsel, and this does not present a conflict, as we are non-voting council-appointed representatives. Mr. Carter.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll take the report mainly as read, but we'll draw the committee's eyes to point 4.4, which is the Chief Financial Officer's comments, who agrees with the recommendation to remove the automatic request of audited accounts and change that to a requested for audited accounts. So if council or members of the association request accounts, the associations need to provide them. Otherwise, they can report normally.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Councillor Fowler.
Yep, thank you. Through you, Chair. I note I agree with the principle that heaven forbid giving money to accountants, though we're worth every cent. There wasn't a joke. So currently the audit fees are about 2.5% of what we give the business associations, 478,000 in total. Can I ask a question? Who prepares the accounts for both the associations?
Thank you. Through the chair, I believe Audit Hawke's Bay does one of them, and BDO, I believe, do the second
Sorry,
set. I think BDO do the second set, but I can confirm.
Okay,
that.
so they're prepared by a chartered accountancy firm, something like that. Yep. And the second question, what does the Constitution say of both those associations in terms of an audit?
So both those associations' constitutions say they need to get audited accounts. That's because our requirement is that they get audited accounts.
Yep.
If the council changes the policy, both associations have agreed that they will go through a special general meeting to change their constitution so they don't have to get audited accounts.
Yep. Okay, so that could be a bit of a catch-22 situation if we agree and they don't. Yep. So my kind of feeling on this is that we could at least do an audit review. So everybody understand what an audit review? It's like a low level of a full-blown substantive audit. Possibly could do it for half price, which would be about 1.25% of the total sum that we give them. I don't know if they do. I'm old, so I don't know whether they do transactional reviews anymore, which is just checking things like vouching for payment of rent and other expenses. But I'm kind of uncomfortable with that amount of money, and the oversights given don't satisfy me. So whether we can investigate at least audit review or a transactional review to give some surety. So.
Through you, Chair, I think we can have that conversation. I think the key thing is the strict audit requirements and the costs that come with that because of the responsibilities to the auditor. I guess that's what drives the costs associated, and I guess it's just trying to ensure that we're maximising those associations' spend on improving, I guess, doing what they're there to do rather than spending money on audits and the like. But so I think we can put some of those checks and balances in place. They are very, I guess, simple organisations and simple sets of accounts to review. So I think having something in there that doesn't have the strict compliance nature of an audit, but still provides a sense of assurance for council, given the funds that are provided, I think we can put that into place.
Could I then, through Chair, move that as a recommendation to get that worded up, that we have a lower level review?
So are you moving that amendment and the
Yes.
recommendations?
Yes.
What I might get you to do. Yeah. So what I'll do is, but before we progress too far, I'll just ask if there is appetite from the table in terms of a seconder for what Councillor Fowler is proposing. Thank you, Councillor Nixon. So what I'll now ask Mr Cameron to do is work up some recommendations based on what Councillor Fowler's raised, and then we can look at those as a committee and make a decision from there. While we're waiting for him to do that, I'll move now to Councillor Nixon.
Well, it's almost been dealt with because those were the issues I felt there was an absence of sufficient checking to make sure that the money is spent as intended. The people are trustworthy, but things do get out of control. So I'm very much in support of Councillor Fowler's comments.
Just while those recommendations are being worked up, I will come back to Mr Carter quickly with a question regarding the checks that are currently in place with appointees. Could you please take us through those?
Absolutely. So on top of the two presentations that they bring to council, so their annual plan and the annual report, there are two councillors and one staff member appointed to their boards that meet every month, and they get their monthly accounts and check them against their KPIs. So there is some checks and balances that go in. The proposed changes still meet the Local Government Act and the Incorporated Societies Act. As Mr Allen mentioned, they are both associations are simple and fall under that threshold for audited accounts through the Incorporated Societies Act.
Thank you, Mr Carter. I'll now come to Deputy Mayor Kerr.
Are you taking comments now?
Yes, we'll welcome those while we're waiting for the team to work up the actual recommendations.
As chair of a trust that has to meet our New Zealand audit standards, I actually really do understand where this is coming from. And having my learned colleague on my left provide words that are still able to ensure that integrity of the data we're provided, but without that high standard that puts the responsibility on the accounting firm to audit and prove everything. Absolutely support this paper. And the other comments with regard to modifying the bid and tidying up the words, etc.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. All right, we'll pause for a moment just while the team finishes their work down the end. Are there any other comments while we're waiting? No? Okay, we will just wait momentarily. Okay, so we've got those draft recommendations on screen now, so if everyone can just take a look, and in the meantime, I'll come to Councillor Fowler for his comments.
Yep. I'm happy to, with the adjustment of C, and happy to move the rest of them as well.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. I'll now come to Councillor Nixon. Are you happy with those? Thank you for that. Okay, given that hopefully everyone's now had a chance to read the amended recommendations, I'll now open up for any further comments. No? Excellent. All right. In that case, we have a substantive motion on the table. I will put that. All those in favour? Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Okay, we'll now move on to item 5, which is our cyclone recovery update report. And I welcome Mr. Elliott to join us, and I believe he has a rather extensive support team that will be joining him also. Before we hand over and begin, though, I'd just like to quickly come to Mr. Cameron now for a minor correction in this particular report. And actually, while he's finding that, I'll come to Councillor Montepiero-Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. Just for transparency, I'm sort of woven into many things in this paper, though past tense, I don't believe that I'm conflicted, and I haven't made any decisions.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you for declaring that. Mr. Cameron.
It's through Madam Chair. It's primarily an information update item. This item, but just draw members' attentions to page 16. And the second bullet point under the infrastructure program highlights, then the fourth sub-bullet point, the Kirraroo Gorge culvert is now expected to be trafficable by mid-March 2025. That timeline is not clear at this time, so just like to discard that timeline comment from the report.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron, and we'll have that noted in the minutes, please, team. Okay, Mr. Elliott, the floor is yours.
Morning, everybody. Obviously, Gus is away, so I'm leading this report, and I'm rather glad that all the people that are going to be speaking to it I can see in this room. It has eased my troubled mind somewhat. We'll take the full quarterly report as read. We realise it's very, very long, but this report, obviously we skipped a reporting period, so this one covers a bit longer, all the way through to November. As the paper notes, the recommendation is that this be the last of these large reports for your bedtime reading. From the start of 2025, officers propose the following: to focus ongoing project and program activity and financial reporting in the existing quarterly report that goes to the Performance and Monitoring Committee, and to use the Strategy and Recovery Committee for reporting on the remaining recovery priorities with a focus on strategic and tactical matters rather than reporting on progress. Examples of this seeking key decisions around awarding contracts where delegations are required, testing approaches with council, flagging matters of significant relevance to forward work programs, and considering lessons learned reports. Rather than going through the full report, I'm going to ask each of the PO-leads to come forward and provide a summary and update for each other. We have made significant progress in 2 of the areas of the work programs that will be coming to the conclusion at the end of the year. We've substantially completed the voluntary buyout, and obviously we'll have an opportunity to speak to that later on in the report, in the meeting. And also the important work of the joint Hastings District Council and HBRC Silt Task Force, which has been doing a wonderful job of collecting millions of tonnes of silt and debris across the region. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Darren and his team for some excellent mahi over the last year, and the task force has made a very significant contribution to the recovery of the district and the wider region. As noted earlier, the slides on the VBO will be very fast. Just some quick stats before we get into the report later on. Basically, we're 99% of the owners have received an offer or have confirmed that they don't want to receive one. 88% have approved, 84 have settled, and that changes obviously every week. And about 71%, probably about 73% now of the demolition is complete. We are still actively engaged in the sale of properties that we have acquired, and also the dwellings and the houses. Highlights as of pretty much this week, that's now should hopefully be only 2 offers by the end of this week to property owners. The remaining couple of offers are dependent on 1 insurance claim, 1 valuation, and we had 1 property join us from the Kopapa Māori pathway. Demolition of dwellings is pretty much on track. We've got 12 left to do this year, and then probably another 10 to 15 next year. The latest forecast, obviously, we've managed to come in under budget around about 45 million, and in the new year we'll look to bring a paper to full council for a complete closeout of the program and the end of the policy. That's where we'll leave the VBO for now. We can get into that later on, and now I call on Mr. Clerk, come and talk about the Havelock North streams and dams.
Morning everyone, and thank you for having me, and thank you Mr. Elliott for those lovely words. So I'm here today to talk to you about, I think, a couple of things. One around the streams and dams progress, and then a little bit on the SILT task force as we wrap that up. So I will get underway through you, Madam Chair. So just to, I guess, wind it all back and link it all together, we developed a strategy in the start of this year, and that really ties the work program that we're doing together for the Havelock North dams and streams. We've got 2 major programs of work, one being obviously the 2C area, as well as the uplift and improvement and additional maintenance and management focus across the streams and dams network. And for us, it was really important to look at it in a 1 to 2 to 3 year horizon initially, and then as we move into future long-term plans, look at that longer horizon. So that's always the objective, to transition this heightened project into a BAU function in essentially 2 years' time. So that's what that looks at doing. For 2024, it's been a busy year, and we focused on a number of key items, and I guess linking it back to building community confidence in the system and understanding the system in general, and through the work that Councillor Dixon is doing, chairing the Community Advisory Group, we're making some really good traction in that space with a really good range of community representatives in that space. We're obviously focusing on things like understanding the council and community's responsibility. So getting that blurry line or grey area in the past better clarified, and then, as I've talked to you in the past, about providing a suite of tools to enable our community and ourselves to take positive action in the way that we would like it to be taken for the future of the streams. So that really wraps up what that big focus is, understanding things like modelling, understanding our dams better, and putting action plans in place across there. 2025 looks at things like developing a master plan across the stream network, and that's a spatial map looking at our future investment program over the next 3 to 10 years, prioritising those investments and then bringing it back into a future long-term plan so that we have a key work program moving forward as we get again out of this heightened project phase. Backing that up, having a clear asset management plan that informs the investment that we're doing, and then a catchment management plan that looks at bringing the water quality and the community aspirations to life through that. There are a number of technical matters, and we introduced last time things like the erosion program, the dam safety program, a better understanding on the streams. But to do all of this, obviously taking our community on that journey and continuing the good work, as I said, of the Community Advisory Group, as well as our other stakeholders, and building on work we need to do in the mana whenua space in particular. For the Mangaro 2C project, again, a busy year, and we are starting to see a number of those things come to fruition with funding secure, business case moving forward, ongoing engagement with our funding partners in Crown Infrastructure and the Regional Council, with more presentations later this week through that team. Obviously, the additional fast-track funding or capability funding that supported our property acquisition and engagement approach, And a number of those other technical matters that I talked about in the wider program benefiting the 2C work, like the modelling and a lot of the geotech and other investigation work. We're due to start our first stage of enabling works next week, and we're moving forward with a lot of our property acquisition as we work through understanding what we need and how much of it we need. So we are getting a really good picture in that space and making positive progress. I think the overarching sentiment is we don't see any major roadblocks in this stage. Our modelling is telling us that we can achieve a 1% solution, and that is practical to do. And yeah, that's a really positive point. It's probably at a really high level. It's shifted our earlier thought around widening the stream to actually widening a smaller section, but possibly tackling two of our bridges and the private bridge and the Plassey Street footbridge, which are probably constraining factors. And just to finish up, obviously what we are doing in that early strategy work was to get a strategy underway that ties it all together. The second iteration of that strategy, which will be the much longer outlook, will look at a more extensive community involvement process. But the way we've done it is we've really leaned into your existing policies, your long-term plan aspirations, and tied our existing first iteration strategy into those, bringing things like some of your earlier visions around the fertile land around Heretaunga, Whenua Haukura, prosper people, Heretaunga, Hapori Ora. So again, focusing on that, bringing that to life, is very valid for what we are working through today. So that's really the wrap up on my Havelock North streams and dams. So happy to take any questions if there are any.
Do we have any questions around that particular piece of work? Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, just a quickie, it might be more appropriate to the next item, I'm not sure. It's looking as though we might be under budget on the buyout. Presumably that also means the government share will be under budget. Is that correct?
I think we can get into it but in short answer, yes, we're well under budget. The Crown's position is also very, very positive because we've borne the costs of demolition in their entirety. So
that's an excellent situation. The question is, and the use of that saving, because we're not making any money out of it, will come back to council. We'll have a say in how it's used.
Well, so again, we'll get we'll bring the formal closeout report on the voluntary buyout at the start of the year. But you'll recall the $50 million was a commitment that we were largely funding through taking on debt.
Yep.
So we're just avoiding basically the full extent of the borrowing that we would have to do.
That's great.
Thank you. Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just the Streams Working Party is going exceptionally well. I'm very impressed with the community members that have put their names forward and been selected. They're actually quite knowledgeable around each of the streams, which is a real bonus. And they've actually got some individual skills, engineering and water and all that sort of thing. So that's a bonus, having that around the table. And the community have already mentioned they're noticing a difference, which is very valuable feedback. They can actually see that work's being done, not just being talked about. So well done to the team. And Darren and Steve and Craig Mountford are leading it really well, giving them the information they need. At our next meeting, we're going to invite Parks and Reserves to come because there's some bridges that are required and all that sort of thing. So they'll be the focus of our next meeting. So yeah, good group to work with.
Excellent. Thank you for that update, Councillor Dixon, and thank you for your work in that area, leading that group. Coming now to Mayor Hazelhurst.
Kia ora and morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair. Can I thank you, Darren, and the team? This is work that, you know, Havelock North has waited for probably about 40 years. So Cyclone Gabrielle has brought this to the fore, but this work, as we've known, has needed to happen. So I'm excited about the 2 Cs. I'm very, very excited about the longer term strategy, and this is critically important. How we protect the Havelock North community for future generation, future events. But just in the terms of our budget, our initial budget for the 2 Cs, do you think that we're going to be able to cover that off for the Havelock North, for the Mangaroa area?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, look, I'm feeling really positive about the budget as it stands. So we had $10 million from the Crown. There was a 75-25 split. We've obviously had a little top up of around 200,000 of some additional engagement support. At the moment, obviously, the spend to date's only around 500,000, so it's pretty low level, but that's obviously reflective of the stage of the project that we're in. We'll get more confidence in that as the design develops, but what we're seeing out of the modelling in particular, it's given me confidence that we're not having to do a range of earthworks, and which obviously where the costs are incurred. So at this stage, feeling positive, but that'll obviously develop as the project goes through its design phase over the next 6 months.
Excellent. Any other questions before we move on to the silt? Okay, excellent. You can carry on.
Kia ora. So, putting my other hat on. So I've been privileged enough to lead, and I've talked to people about this. I don't know if it was the right man, wrong place, how it worked out, but here I am. And thanks to the leadership of Nigel and Graham Hanson and others, for obviously, putting me forward for a role like this. So I've been leading this since middle of March 2023, not long after the cyclone, and I thought I'd just take you through a couple of the key achievements and as we come to winding the program up. So you can see a range of photos there that range from Esk Valley through to Pakawhai, through to some of our silt deposit sites. One of the early steps we took was creating an online system to manage the number of jobs and allow us to triage them essentially. So what you see there is initially a system set up by the district council's wonderful GIS team and then transitioned over to the regional council. It allowed community members to call in jobs either through an online platform or via the phone system and log jobs, and then we could triage it through their lifespan. And that ranged from our silt through to general waste through to woody debris, and it ranged across our region. One of the early steps we did as well was zone the areas, so we put it into 6 different zones, and that was really a bit of a way to deal with the daunting task of just having just the sheer volume of activities to deal with, and that actually benefited us significantly. It also allowed us to bring community liaison and contractors into each of those zones to really own the areas and build relationships with community. So the numbers, I took a snap of that late last week, but we had 11 jobs left then. I think we've got about 7 left as of today, and by the end of the week we might have 1 or 2. So we're really coming to the end of the individual collection, and alongside that working through our remediation of our existing sites. Volume you can see out of what we estimate as we work through each individual job, around 2.5 million cubic metres to collect. We've probably just ticked over 2.5 million at the end of last week. I guess for us, a big part of it is storytelling and delivery, and hopefully these look familiar, but this infographic's been used and probably evolved a little bit over the last 18, 20 months. But ultimately, for me, it tells a story of delivery, and for us, it's telling that story of just slowly chipping away at what is the big beast. And we started with 400 odd jobs in the top one in July 23 through to over 1,100 jobs now in November. 2 key stats that I've presented before is just showing the volume of silt moved and then the funding injections. So we started obviously in May, and you can see the ramp up of silt, and this is cubic metres here month by month. And that was through to March, and you can see we had obviously a big peak in August, September last year, where we have to put the brakes on, and then we've obviously been fortunate enough to have some funding injections and restart with our initial funding, and then a 10, 10 and a 40 million. And you can see the numbers change through there, and if I flick to the next one, it's one to the end of November. So again, we had the last one ended in March around here, and obviously we've carried on now. So as of end of November, 250,000 truck movements carrying our sediment and debris, 111 million spent through the task force to date, with about 7 jobs to finish at the end of last week, and over 350,000 tonnes of woody debris managed across our rivers, our coastlines, ranging all the way from Port Ongaho and Kairako in our Central Hawke's Bay area through to Mahia and Taylors Bay in the north. I think a key thing to share with everybody is kind of the split, and what I'm really proud of is a lot of the work done with pushing the work through to our contract market, and in particular our local contract market. So this is, I think, focus less on the dollars and more on the percentage figures, because this takes a bit of effort for me to compile. So I've put it to the end of September, but what you are seeing there is that 95% of the spend of that, what is 111 million now, has been spent through our contractor market. Only 3.6 million has been spent on our consultant or project management services, etc. That covers things like our hydraulic modelling, our environmental sampling, obviously our project management time and those things. And then on top of that is some of the other fees, so some of our internal costs as well as some of our leases that we have for our silt deposit sites. So on top of that, obviously a big focus, and again something I'm proud of, is the push through local contractors as well as our Māori and Pacifica businesses. So some of the metrics through places in a traditional consenting like Te Puni Kōkiri and Amatai look at a 5% Māori and Pacifica business total aspiration. So in this space, in a I guess a fast-paced environment, we've again tried to do as much as possible to leverage, one, our local market, but also our Māori and Pacifica businesses. And we have worked with agencies like Te Puni Kōkiri in the early days to open up the market into places like that. So again, 8% spend, 20% contractor numbers, and then 83% of our local businesses. And I think in presentations like this before, I've been pretty harsh on how I put people into categories for local as well. So some of our bigger contractors possibly have a good local presence, but they aren't owned by locals and they work outside and they aren't categorised through that. And then my last slide, I think just wrapping it up, and I thought some photos that we've been taking as we go through our drone footage to show what it looks like in more recent times. So again, I talked about the zone area, so the zone 1, and that's a picture of Eskdale Park, which the Parks team are doing a wonderful job in preparing that for getting ready for opening when it is ready. But it has seen a marked difference from what it was in the middle of this year when we first started to tackle the clean-up in that area. Esk Valley has seen us focus on around 230 properties or land blocks and shift over 1 million cubic metres of material in that space alone. Zone 2, which focused on the Pakawhai or Toto area, 262 properties. Again, properties sometimes differ in land block and size, and I think looking at numbers last night, around 7,000 hectares that we focused on across the program. And again, a majority of those are in land use class 1 to 3, so our most highly productive and fertile soils. 225,000 cubic metres managed in that area. Zone 3 and 4 are Dartmoor, Puketapu North, and then Zone 4 is Puketapu South, the Motio area. And again, over 279 properties and 189 properties respectively, and over 1 million cubic metres between the two. The top left photo is looking at Dartmoor Road down towards Puketapu. So yeah, that's a bit of a summary for me, but I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you again for everybody for your support. I guess if community are listening, thank you to community for their patience, their sense of humour and their ability to work with us. We've learned a lot. It's been a challenging time. I talked to a lot of people about building a plane kind of as we're flying it a little bit in this space, finding homes, and there are some really positive stories about reuse. Just recently, obviously, the expressways received a significant amount of silt as well, and talking to MP Catherine Reid on the weekend, you know, that's a really positive outcome, as well as places like Parklands Development and Napier. So positive reuse opportunities, and hopefully they can show others what's possible in a fast-paced environment. So kia ora and thank you.
So Darren, just through you, Chair, before we go to questions and comments from the councillors, can I just take the opportunity to say you were absolutely the right person at the right time in March 2023. Really interesting, because you joined a team, Graham Hanson, that was with young Jeff Landsberg at council, trying to work out how to start the clean-up of silt and at the time household effects and rubbish and all of those issues at the time. The things that were really I reflect back on with some pride. The importance of relationship capital. Graham Hanson, I need to acknowledge, he did a lot of this off probably 4 decades of relationships. So the silt sites, they weren't done through a big legal and technical process. Those were judgments about where would be good end sites for the silt to go that weren't double handling and lots of truck movements. And a lot of that was done off relationship capital and handshakes with legal and financial documents following. It quickly evolved into what was initially a Hastings, but then became a Hastings and Regional Council partnership. And I do want to acknowledge it has been a partnership with the Regional Council. I want to acknowledge in particular Susie and Jess and a lot of the work they've done over that period of time, a lot of the administration and back end of that. It has been an incredibly collaborative effort with the regional council. I think that's been acknowledged. The Silt Recovery Task Force has been won the Waste Minimisation Project of the Year from industry, and last week it also won local government, award. But at its heart, those things that you've touched on, easy to gloss over, the fact that the money has gone not on consultants and bureaucracy, but directly to contractors, predominantly local contractors, that we have found opportunities to really support our Māori businesses as well. I think it's a real testament. And at the end of the day, not even 2 years on, the fact that we've had that much silt cleared up, we're starting to see the progress about assisting people to get land back into productive use in our community recovered. I couldn't be more thankful on behalf of the council to have had you on point leading that. So just a massive note of thanks and congratulations. You've been superb, Darren.
Thank you, too. I'll now move on to Deputy Mayor Kerr.
Absolutely support what Nigel said, and that's from a community perspective. You've moved mountains, done miracles. Can you make it rain so the grass can grow? That's the only thing I now hear from community is the dust element, and they appreciate it's not within your realm, but Esk Park will be looking superb if we get some rain. More superb. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Are there any questions or further comments before we move on? Councillor Baddoe.
Thanks, Darren, and what a huge success, and I think you've been acknowledged a couple of times now through those awards, which is awesome. We've got a bit of a paper on the agenda soon about the learnings from the VBO process, and I think having a successful project of this nature, those kind of learnings and how it could apply to future projects is pretty big. What do you think made it such a success for you, and how could you replicate that in the future?
Through you, Madam Chair, really good question. We've been thinking about that a little bit around how we could share some of these learnings for other areas and what's relevant. And I mean, look, it's been a success, but there has also been a lot of challenge and a lot of kind of adversity to work through. As we've understood, we made certain decisions, and they brought more trucks on the road, more trucks than the roads can handle, for example, and trying to navigate, what was a happy medium. We're still dealing with some challenges at the moment with, the amount of waste that we've got left to kind of get rid of, and that's kind of been left to the back end of the program, and that becomes a big cost. So there's a few things we still have to iron out, but I think the success, though, has been, and Nigel referred to before about the cross-council collaboration. So and when I first came on board, and I guess maybe my independence helped that a little bit, but community doesn't care which council hat you work for. So being able to get that council kind of interrelationship, so we are all working on the same goal. We're not, this is my site and this is another site. So the multi-agency approach, whether that's council, community, contractor, that I think has been a real success, because we haven't come into communities and said this is how we're doing it, working with communities, hopefully for the most part, that we've been able to use our community liaisons, for example, to navigate those relationships. And a lot of our time in the coalface is actually just having discussions with community members, with landowners, who are quite overwhelmed about what to do next and how do I even start. So I think that helped a lot. I think one of the key learnings for me is how we contract anything like this into the future. So I would probably provide advice that setting up contractor panels that you can leverage, so you're not having to try and work on contracting in the heat of the moment and agreeing rates and working through things like that, because that can be some really awkward and tense conversations. And I think we've navigated them, but they've turned out a success, but they've been hard work and a lot of a big challenge in that space. And then I think the foresight of trying to understand what we could do to allow that silt and debris to be in a positive reuse opportunity. So unlocking a lot of door knocking in the early days around people wanting to help, but trying to demystify what is actually going to be helpful and what isn't. I think a lot of the testing that we did of the material has allowed us to be in a position where we can either offer it to a development or offer it for reuse and not having to pay significant fees to dispose of the material.
I just think through you, Chair, it's probably it's a really good observation, Councillor Baddoe, around whether we should have like a formal lessons learned in the context of as the government starts to wind down the cyclone recovery apparatus, that some of those lessons being captured and shared and influencing the system for future events. Because, yeah, you know, just as you're saying all of that, Darren, I can think to some of the heat that was around this time a year ago around, you know, things that were looked at by the Serious Fraud Office, you know, the system's being rorted and anti-competitive behaviour and all of that. So I think as we've navigated all that, some of those lessons are actually really important to, I think, capture formally on the record and share into the system. And while I can, because I should have done it in my summary, is also just to acknowledge the Crown and the silk space, because whilst we're talking about the recovery task force that's been a joint venture between Hastings and the Regional Council and where the bulk of the jobs have been, you know, it's also been all of the debris, woody debris, damage in Wairoa, Napier, that was all funded separately, but circa $200 million from the Crown that has gone in the last 2 years too. That wasn't on a cost share basis, that was entirely an investment from the Crown.
Thank you, Mr. Mickle. I think we'll take that as an action. I think that's a good point raised by Councillor Buddo. Committee members, I am conscious that we have 5 further presenters on this particular item and we have 6 more items after this. So I will come to our final 3 speakers, but will ask respectfully if you can keep it concise. Councillor Teo Skipworth.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the report and for turning mountains into mounds. And I say that empathetically, not knowing how you slept that night with people wanting to have things done for them to help them heal. The other, just to support Councillor Buddo's comment, really grateful for the 20% Māori businesses, and that how do we again look at those opportunities for future projects. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Councillor Hickey.
And once again, he tautoko ana ngā koro ka mihia. One of the things that the community judges on is how quickly we get things done and how we make decisions. So whilst, you know, we made those right decisions on where to and what to, the ability to do this swiftly, quickly and under budget sort of gives confidence to our community, but it also builds capability and capacity within our own community on future proofing our community by this positive change. So just acknowledge you for your mahi and everyone that's behind as well.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Any final words, Mr. Clerk?
No, thank you everyone for your kind words. I think, multi-agency approach is the key takeaway. Be it Crown, be it into community, and obviously you can't do something like this by yourself. So again, and that is into, you know, from your council staff through to our contract market and just the amazing people that we have in Hawke's Bay that step up in situations like this. So kia kaha, and I also know the recovery journey is not finished. So that's probably the other key message is this. It's probably the start for a lot of people by having a blank paddock as well. So we need to continue to be there to support and be empathetic in that space. So yeah, kia ora and thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Excellent. Mr. Elliott, your next speaker.
Indeed. Speaking of large projects, that brings us to infrastructure. Jag and presentation, please.
Welcome, team.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. Just before I launch, I think it's time this time of the year to acknowledge a couple of people. I have the privilege of leading a team of 8 people upstairs that do phenomenal work for this mahi, and then Jag, Craig, our leaders in transport, our advisory board going up the chain for your support, this house as well as the council for their support, our finance, our funders who have made this possible. I think they've come to the party in a big way. Lots of challenges but yeah, so we've got here. It's been an interesting ride this year. So what I also just want to comment is the presentation. This is quite a fast-moving beast. So I'll make corrections to the presentation as I go, as things have changed since the presentation was put together. So, thank you. Raise it there. All right, so our highlights. So the panel of contractors were appointed. We know about those. Those are the four. That's TW, Downer, Tupori and Hicks Brothers. They were appointed. Those were our main contractors, the four of them. But also, just as importantly, we've looked at other work for our smaller non-panel contractors. And that work is also currently being assigned to them. That is just to keep those contractors busy and share the work amongst all the contractors in the region, or as much as we can. On the bridges, the House may remember that we have a third package of work, or third group of work, and those are bridge repairs and bridge replacements that are going to our pre-qualified contractors, and not only the four main panel contractors. Mana Whenua engagement, this continues. I think huge progress has been made through the year, and some interesting training. The third point is the training. It was early on identified that the Mana Whenua had some constraints on people to provide the support for the contractors. So a training module was created where the contractors are trained by the Mana Whenua. Then next point important is the Matapira Bridge. Work is underway and going very well, and we'll talk in detail about that in a second. Program risks, the capacity, and this is what I brought up about the training. So there's a risk that the Mana Whenua and the treaty partners have capacity issues. This could slow down our work. However, with this training system that has been created, that's been to a large extent mitigated by doing that. Collective impact on the network. This is obviously, as we get start more work, there could be that impact on the network. We have road cones, and lots of them. So, and our team are working really hard at checking those impacts and trying to front foot that while delivering this work at pace. So that's a risk as well. Certainty, the lack of certainty around funding, that is a lot better now, but we continue on that journey with our funding partners, as well as there's a certain or challenges around recovery of funding as we do that. And then there's weather and unforeseen circumstances, of course.
Just a little bit brief update on the capacity of Mana Whenua. We're using a mixed model. The mixed model main is we are training people, our contractors, but at the same time as we are putting a resource to share information. The share information is we have a GIS base. We are putting all the cultural site, known site on the GIS platform. Then we are meeting with each of the Hapu group and tell us about the unknown site. And we are having that discussion with the contractors as well to manage that risk. And the second one is we got some money to support Mana Whenua as well, probably 600-700K. We actually also paying Mana Whenua cultural advice, the advice, the specific advice they're giving us. So we are managing that risk. I think for me, it's going really well. And when Anthony is saying the collective impact, this is just for example, as we're doing the Dartmoor Road slip. Next year, we're going to do the bridge on Ressington. And if you can remember, the Dartmoor and the Puketitis are the only link to that community. So we need to actually understand the implications of what that means. And I think that's what Anthony meant by collective. The lack of certainty, I think Anthony is right. I don't believe the funding is the issue for this year. I think we're a lot of money. The issue we need to spend that money probably by 30th of June. As the more probably going into the future from 25 onward. and the weather and unforeseen, when they come, we'll deal with them.
Yep, absolutely. And so the weather and unforeseen circumstances, we try to obviously manage those and have the various strategies to deal with those. So I spoke about the supply panel earlier, so that's the update. So all 4 of those contractors have now been assigned their work, and they are carrying on and doing incredibly well. We are looking at additional work where they qualify to take on additional sites to keep that continuation of work going on. There's very strict criteria to how they qualify for work, and our team look at that. We have a process that each one of those recommendations go through before any additional work is awarded to the contractors. And there's another slide coming up which will give you an update on dates and those kind of things. Adding to that panel of contractors, again, the smaller non-panel contractors, we are identifying work for them, and that work is starting to go out the door for them. Right, and we start. So we're making good progress on Tahapi Road, Glengarry, Puketjitri, and Dartmoor on those slips. We have a slide coming up a little bit later which will give us some dates. There has been a couple of challenges, but we're working through them with regards to consents and land access. But all those are coming together, and the teams are cracking on nicely. There we go. So these are our anticipated completion dates. These are contractual completion dates. Just a correction, Tahapi Road, February 2026. Pull that back to February 2025.
Well, that's good news.
That was just a typo. And then even the dates that you see there, June 2025 for Glengarry, Puketjitri, we're looking at pulling those dates back, and we will update. And Jake, maybe you want to update there a little bit.
Yeah. So if I use the example of Tahapi Road, I think in the contract we said the contract completion period 18 months. When they bid for the job, they said 9 months. Now they're talking 5 months. So they are making a huge progress. Glengarry's Tapuri is the same. They are going really fast, going really big, and with a very good quality as well. So I think this panel model is really good at giving us flexibility, adaptability, scalability. And at the same time, we've got a very good process, and I call them the 3 golden rules. They have to actually comply before we get them extra job. Make sure they're actually delivering performance. Anything for the variations, value for money, so we compare against their contract rates. And the third one is they're also meeting the social procurement objectives as well. So every time engineers rep, when they actually put a recommendation for extra variation, they actually put a memo. We're happy with the performance, quality, programming, time, resource, suppliers, allocations, and we're happy to actually share one of the report next time when we present how we are assessing, and I believe they're all doing really well. And there's a bit of competition between them as well. At the moment, as who want to go faster and get more work, and which is good probably from the health side. So we are very impressed so far.
Yep. Just adding to that, sometimes we actually have to slow them down so that we can keep up. So,
Excellent problem to have. I'm just going to interrupt quickly and come to Councillor Kerr.
Nigel, did you go to speak?
Nigel?
Okay. So my question is the next tranche of work. So here's your 4 first steps, and according to JAG, if they meet all the expectations, when is the next 4 tranches for these?
To commit to them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we're doing is there's a weekly meeting or monthly meeting going with them at the moment. And we get 1 pager as well, and I'm happy to actually distribute them at the next one. And that page actually they says this is the contracted thing, and here the follow-up work which is coming, and this is when it's coming. So there's a list of jobs with each of the panel members. So if I take the example of Tahapi Road, all the job on Fana, Cronthorpe, all those areas as well. Exactly, we're telling TW. What we're also doing is at the moment we're using 3 criteria for the allocation. One is a geographic based, so like on Taipi Road, anything around that area, TW, Dartmoor Hex Brothers, Pukititi there, so that's one. Second criteria we're talking is the capacity, who has got the capacity to respond. So remember, we also got 52 million we have to spend by 30th of June. And we want to make sure that work leave the door as soon as possible. I think our issue, I want to be honest, our issue is at the moment the design completion, which we're dealing with our consultants. Just to make sure, so what we're doing now is we're getting the weekly report from the consultant, which work is leaving to our supplier this week, what is leaving next week, and I've got a pretty good process in place. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think so for the 4 panelists, to add to that, the 4 panelists are locked and loaded with work up until at least July next year. What we found is one of the contractors had a small gap of work where the design wasn't ready for that piece of work. So what we did is we allocated another piece of work to keep them occupied, and so it's quite a dynamic rolling piece, and that goes, as I said, and Jake mentioned, it goes through that process of gates that we check that everything is in place before we issue to work to them.
Fantastic. Councillor Crew, quick follow-up, and then I'm going to come to Hazelhurst.
So the process for allocating new work, is that something that comes back through this table as a council decision, or was that original tender crafted so that if they meet the standards for the first tranche, being these, they can then apply for the next tranche? Right, thank you.
And that obviously just goes without saying through you, Chair, within the delegations that exist.
Excellent, thank you. Hazelhurst.
Thank you, and thanks for the team. I'm really interested in Risington and the timing. It's a significant rebuild for that community, and so it's not, it's the bridge, but it's all the connecting areas and the new placement, etc. When will the design be finished, and we'll be going out for tender for Risington?
Yeah, I think at this stage we are planning construction on Risington mid next year, if I can remember.
That's
Anthony.
right.
Yeah. So which means the tender will be going early next year.
Early next year.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll start the construction mid next year. I think what I'm saying, everyone, the next year will be the biggest year for us to spend money, to be honest, because at the moment we are actually doing a lot of the designs. And my idea is probably at the moment, all the bridge design, we've got probably 13, they're all finished by February next year.
Yep.
All of them, I'm talking, not just 1 or 2 of them. And the consents being run in parallel. So we all got consent finished, design finished, tender document are finished. And I think the speed of delivery will depend on the funding, how much money we've got from the cash flow perspective. But Risington is definitely on the priority.
Thank you, Jay. And so in terms of the 30 June date, is there the opportunity, if we haven't got everything done, to get an extension through you, Chief Executive?
So at the moment, what NZTA is saying through you, Chair, is we're giving you a whole look at money. You've got to have all of this delivered by the 30th of June. And I think for the community, we want to get as much of it actually completed as possible. Working on the basis if it's contracted and under construction, there'll be an opportunity to have a conversation with the NZTA, given it took 4 months of the 12-month period to even agree the funding. So but strictly it must be done by the 30th of June. The focus is getting it basically contracted and underway, and then we'll have that conversation if we need to next year.
Just want to add another thing is the 30th of June is only for the 83%. So even let's say as we don't finish the whole 52 million, we finish let's say 48 million. The 48 will be still paid at 83%. The balance, which is 4 million, will be still paid in the following year, but at a 73%, not 83%.
No,
so we'll lose 10%.
Don't need to go there.
No, what I'm saying, that's what they're telling us.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, team, I am conscious we've got a number of presenters after you, although this is critically important, so I'll get you to move along a smidgen faster.
Yep. There we go. So next is mana whenua. So Jag added some context to the mana whenua. So the engagement involved the desktop analysis, site visits, drive overs, and that speeded up the delivery and the consents from the mana whenua to get the work going, and that process has gone really well. We're also very happy to let the House know that we made an offer today to our permanent mana whenua coordinator who will be joining our team in January. So we're really excited about that. And that will also reduce our dependency on the consultants and costs. So that's that. This is the training. So as I said earlier, early on in the work, we recognised the resource limitations, and a training scheme was put together to provide training to the contractors, and that has moved along and has worked really well. We've completed all 4 of the main contractors. We're now looking at involving those smaller non-panel contractors, getting them on the same training so that we have that in place as well. And then as the bridges come online, that group number 3, those might be different contractors again, bringing them onto the same training. So that is all in tow. So pretty go. Kiru Gorge, the project has moved along a little bit, not as smoothly as we wanted to, but the team are now cracking on and really moving along. We're looking at having that completed as during 2025. And
just noting again the correction,
Correct.
It's 2025.
Correct, 2025.
Just to be clear through you, Chair, I mean, what we actually need to have a conversation with the community and ultimately you as the governance table about is the choices between time and money. So choices around the speed at which you might want to accelerate is directly proportionate to how much more money you want to spend, and that is a process that we need to talk about with you and the community before we land on an actual date in 2025.
Yeah, and just to add to that, as soon as today, there'll be a mail going out to our board looking for direction on those options of how we want to take this forward. So, but it's looking great. If you take a drive out there, the project's looking well. And at a recent community meeting, the community seem to be supporting the work. They can see a lot's going on, and so there's it doesn't take an engineer to go out to site and realise it's not going to be ready by Christmas. So and the community know that. So yeah.
Quick question from Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Chair. Would you just like to make a general or a quick comment regarding the adjustment to design and extra steel, and just so we understand that progress? Just a general comment. Yeah.
So what we found is that during the design, this is quite a dynamic site. So, and the original design, the smallest change you make in one area affects a different site. So what happened was there was an extra excavation on the left-hand side, so on the right of the page. So additional material had to be added. I won't go into the technical details. That then changed the loading on the arch. When that loading changed, the designers came back and said, because of that, we need to add more steel to protect the arch, so reinforcing over the arch. That came at a later time, so that steel had to be ordered, and that these things cause delays. And so it's about protecting that the arch, and also, for seismic activity, just to make sure that it will withstand the apocalypse now. So there's.
Thank you, team. Quick comment now or question from Councillor Baddo.
Yeah, no, look, just a quick comment. It's pretty obvious that the contractors are going hell for leather down there, and I think the community really appreciates that and the work they've been doing and the work your team's been doing to involve the community, the open day, the school, Maraikako School. The more people that see that site, the better. And full credit to the contractors and our team here. They've been very welcoming and very ready to share all of that with the community as it's happened. Thank you very much for the correction. I get a little nervous around those dates.
Yes.
And yeah, look forward to having that discussion, Nigel. And I think the community is pretty realistic when it comes to that.
Thank you for your acknowledgement of that, Councillor Baddo, and thank you for the work you've been doing in the community there to keep everyone informed as well. Okay, team, I understand you've got a couple more slides.
Yeah, I'll try and whiz through them.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Puketapu Bridge is moving along swiftly, going very well, and budgets are looking in order. So a correction on that slide, it's not by mid to late 25, it's mid 2025. Dual carriageway bridge with a separate shared path. We'll restore that connection. Matapira Bridge, as I said, that project is now underway, also doing well. A couple of challenges in the beginning, but those are all sorted out now, and we are on track for mid-2025 as well for Matapira Bridge. And then... So the next 2 years, work will begin on the replacement of those 6 other bridges, and then the repairs as well to the remaining 57 bridges will continue. There is a very robust plan now that the team have put together, and we are looking at having a lot of the repair work finished by June of next year. So we're really happy with the progress.
Fabulous, team. I am conscious of time, but I will invite, we shall clap, because it is a huge program. So well done, team, and well done particularly on the panel that you've put in place. That seems to be working very well. Any other quick questions? No. Thank you very much, team. Keep up the great work. I now understand that we're moving on to Ms. Dinwoody for an update on community and whānau wellbeing. And I will apologise for stating that we will ask you to move as quickly as you can whilst also communicating very important work.
Thank you, Councillor. Good morning, councillors. This will be very quick. We can go to the first slide. Thank you. But as you're aware, we actually have a workshop giving you much more detail about the progress of this afternoon. But as you know, it's very much a community-led programme. We now have 44 community hubs that we're working with across our district. It's a 6-step pathway which we'll go through in detail this afternoon, which basically the community end up with a resilience plan with a lot of equipment, and they're trained, and they also have an emergency hub guide so they know what to do in an emergency using the equipment they've got and the people that they've got in the community and the specific skills that they've got in the community. So it's very much about engagement, and we have got 3 priority areas, not based on the community's priority, but based on the way we're working with them. In addition to that, we keep having our community hub meetings, which have been really successful. And just in the absence of anyone from this team, I will cover this as well. But again, it's all about building trust and relationships. The Pauahuria team have done an amazing job. Out of those 44 emergency hubs, there's 12 marae that we're working with directly across the district. We're also working with Tai Whenua, both in Napier and Heratonga, but working with Tai Whenua Heratonga specifically to look at how we work with their 40 marae to make sure that we have documents and processes that work for all the organisations involved and the community, of course. This does all take time, but again, it's all about engagement. So happy to take any questions.
You win the award for the fastest presentation. Thank you, Mr. Woody. Do we have any questions for Mr. Woody? Mayor Hazelhurst.
I'll start with a comment and then I'll ask a question about funding, Bex. But can I just acknowledge you and your team for this extraordinary, amazing work? To hear recently in Wellington, Minister Mitchell of Civil Defence talking about Hawke's Bay standing up resilience and not waiting for change of legislation for CEDAM. This is absolutely incredible work. This is about everybody being prepared and ready for future events, which we know there will be, hopefully not too soon. And this is to see the leadership in the room and how they are taking the lead now with websites and sharing knowledge and sharing equipment, and this big collective group who are incredibly proud. So thank you for the leadership. It is quite extraordinary, and we can be very proud that we are leading the way for resilience for the future. Just a question on our close to $4 million from MPI and Red Cross. Are we going to be able to allocate that funding into the right areas before any strict timeframes that are required?
Thank you, Ms. Sandra, through you, Councillor. Yes, we are very much working hard to do that. We've also got DIA funding as well, so we've across those three organisations, as you rightly say, nearly $4 million. We have already wrapped up the MPI fund, which was the first one that we got, and it has been difficult because we have had to push communities in a way, but communities understand the timeframes of the funding, and so the engagement, has been difficult at times, but the community understands. So yes, we plan to have it all out the door in the timeframes that we've contracted to.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr.
This is actually a shout out to the Chief Executive, Nigel. Post-cyclone, one of the most, from my point of view, amazing decisions you made was to get community connectors. Because I look at, in peacetime, the size of my ward and an expectation to be able to get around it. And so much of this work has been done through the community connectors, identifying the hubs and the leaders and growing. The resilience seems the wrong word, but the empowerment of that community to be able to look after themselves. So from me, from my community board members and from my community, thank you so much. Thank you for making that call, and to all of those that then filled those roles. What amazing people they were, are, and still are being. So thank you, Bex.
If I may, thank you, Councillor, through you, Chair. We were so lucky to get amazing people in the right place at the right time, as someone alluded to earlier. And we have, some of those people have remained with us and some of us have moved, some of them have moved on now, but everyone had a really special place in that team at that very difficult time.
Absolutely. Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll move on. Thank you very much, Mr. Noddy, and thank you to your entire team. I'd now like to invite Mr. Hayes to take us through the building recovery.
Morning. This will be another quick one, so hopefully we'll make up some time. Look, it's just real quick update on where we're at. So yeah, everything's tracking pretty good. These are just some stats on the reassessments or the placarded buildings. So we started off with 938 buildings that were placarded that obviously needed a level of repair or rebuild or demolition. 337 remain, so 601 have been reassessed. So I guess just on that, yeah, full credit to William Nell, who we took on early after the cyclone, who he's our inspector, undertaking probably 98% of the reassessments. So just want to acknowledge him. And I think we're tracking pretty nicely to be all done and dusted at about the 4-year mark, which was what we sort of thought would land early on, but we'll reassess at the 3-year mark and see where we're heading. Building consents for low-risk buildings in high-risk area, so they're tracking nicely. We are issuing consents for low-risk buildings such as storage sheds, evolution blocks, etc., non-sleeping or high-risk buildings at this point. So that's about it from me.
Councillors, any questions? No? Well, thank you, Sam, and thank you for your outstanding work this year. Okay, I'd now like to invite Jess to take us through the financial support section. Welcome.
Good morning. I will also be very quick with this one. A few things have moved on since I wrote the slide. Probably the key thing that I want to mention is that on Friday, between the roading team and myself, we applied for 20 million in invoices to CIP for the roading transport program. So hopefully we'll be seeing that coming in shortly. The Cat3 buyout program is really well on track. We're looking to come in under the 50 million, which is really good. We've got a few properties that have settled in November and a few to go in December, and I think we've got one in January. So we will be sort of recognising that money that we've received from CIP as those properties settle. Otherwise, it's pretty much business as usual in the recovery space finance-wise, and it's all looking pretty good.
That's all good news.
So, anybody's got any questions?
Councillor Watkins, yes, Sandra has your first.
Thank you very much, Jess. And through you, Chair, I'm just interested in the holding costs. So we've just invoiced 14 million, did you say? 20 million. And we've been carrying the holding costs for that work that we've already previously paid. What is the sum of money?
Yeah, we'll probably have to come back to you, Jess. I mean, this is where it balances out between a lot of the voluntary buyout stuff got paid in advance. So one of the things that we're working through, and it's taken a little while time with Crown Infrastructure Partners, and you know we see the Chief Executive on a regular basis. He's here on Thursday. Is CIP being very, very clear that the level of that they're working with many councils that aren't all the same, and the level of supporting information that they require to be presented for payment invoices is significant, and so it's taken a little while to find the happy medium. To be fair to Crown Infrastructure Partners, the Chief Executive's constantly at me around, I want to get money out the door to you, and we've just been finding our space between the two entities of what is because it's different from NZTA, and so I'm going to get into all the boring technical stuff, but it's taken us a little while to work through. So when we have, for example, in the design space, bills from consultants that have all of their jobs, and then CIP want to see the detailed invoices just for the things that they're funding, it's ended up being quite a lot of work, but the CIP have made it clear, well, we're not like NZTA, we're not coming to do audits, we actually require, and so we've kind of worked our way through that, and hence why, there was a payment claim on Friday for $20 million. So I don't know how we are on how we've come out on the ledger. We can probably come back on that, but it's been a bit of balancing out between some stuff that we've been paid in advance versus some things that we've been clearly in the transport space, wearing some holding costs associated with,
Yes, and I know Graham and Aaron are working on the actual numbers for those holding costs as well. So we should be able to
I think it's really important that the table understands what this looks like, what it means to us, because we're still there may be some unders and overs, but we're still carrying those holding costs, and if there's ways that we can get regular invoicing in rather than waiting for gathering up of 20 million, how we can do that, because it's an ongoing project and we probably need to look at a system that is going to be, you know, faster.
And just through you, Chair, I think we're at that point now. It's taken us a little while to get to what is the, how do we set this up, given it's going to be ongoing, and just really want to get this into a good monthly claim that's being made. So it's just been working through that kind of level of detail that CIP's wanted to see in terms of making.
That come back to you through performance and monitoring. Thank you.
Yes, I was just about to say we'll take that away as an action with reporting potentially coming through performance and monitoring or the most appropriate forum. Okay, no further questions. Excellent, thank you so much for your report. We'll now move on to Ms Joyce with communications and engagement. Oh, great. Thank you.
We've got a couple of slides here. They're not hugely different to last. Oh no, the last report didn't have it. So yeah, we're got comprehensive engagement, particularly to our most affected, with us taking the temperature on that level of communications through our rural councillors and community board, through our Havelock North contacts, and we are getting predominantly, in fact, in the last couple of months, totally positive feedback on the level of comms. It's that balance between too much and not enough. So happy to take any questions, but yeah, it's all pretty straightforward.
Any questions? No, thank you. You do win the award. Well done. Excellent. So before I seek a mover and a seconder, Mr. Elliott, are there any final closing comments you'd like to make on this particular report?
No closing comments. I think everything's been very well covered.
It has indeed. Okay, on that basis, I'd like to direct committee members to page 17 where we do have recommendations. Can I please seek a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Dixon. All right, we have a motion on the table. I'll put that. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Okay, moving now on to item 6, which has Mr. Elliott in the hot seat again, and I believe you have a video for us to view.
I do. Before we get to that, I'll just quickly cover off some points. So the report that you have in front of you looks to cover off 3 particular things. First of all, it looks to compare the performance of the voluntary buyout compared to the goals that council set when it set up the voluntary buyout program. Secondly, it seeks to identify work streams that need to be carried on with the closure of the voluntary buyout office on the 31st of December and the recommended teams in council that should pick up that work and any resources that they require. And then the third bit is really just feeds into a national discussion on policy going forward on a more national scale, so we can use it to compare our experience with those of other regions. We drew a lot on the lessons learned from Christchurch when we were formulating this at the start. So the third area really looks to just create a discussion going forward for hopefully further events, national events. The paper also marks the end of an extraordinary effort that drew on the resources of nearly every council team and many council officers that initially, in the initial stages, did large contributions to getting it underway. This was a very much a full team effort. It also relied heavily on the trust model that was created by council, the chief executive and the senior leadership team that was critical to its success. For me, this process started with an email from Mr. Cameron that said, "Welcome on board to council. Sorry to hit you with this on day 2, mate." So it's been quite the journey. The VBO, of course, was pretty much its own little entity, and the people in it tended to enjoy a certain amount of anonymity tucked away over there, but I have forced them to come to the council chamber today so that they can be seen. So I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the team that we have. First of all, we've got Josh and Joe. So Josh is in the Hawaiian shirt. He came from Napier City Council and he liked us so much he decided to stay with Hastings District Council and has moved on to a full-time job. And Joe Fergus has taken over from Tyler McDonald. You will remember she was at Hastings Council, who's now moved on. We have the 2 striking gentlemen at the end are from the property group, and they have been instrumental in the success as well. We were very lucky to have the property group with us. That is Craig Sampson. On the right and on the left is Gareth Nicol. Gareth Nicol is
I refer to him as Grey Wacky. He is the bedrock of the buyout. He is solid, and he is very quiet, like most things, just quietly goes about his business, but we have relied on him heavily. And then we have, lastly, the connectors. We have Ray White is on the end, Ange Taylor, Kat Mortensen, and sitting by herself over there is Angela Lond. So Gareth and the connectors, I'll just point out, were the staff that had the most direct contact with property owners. I've listened to them on the phone, and even throughout the most difficult of conversations, they've always remained calm, polite, and respectful. They always remained motivated to achieve the best possible outcome for their owners, and selflessly, even though they knew that with the closing of the VBO, it also meant the loss for some of them of their employment, they did not waver in their desire to do the very best for every single property owner, and that is the very definition of commitment. So we do have a little video that was forced upon us, and like most things in the VBO, it is rather unscripted, so we'll see how it turned out. Sound of that in. Just need some volume.
A huge shout out for the VBO team for their incredible mahi over the last year. It's been interesting, it's been hard, but it's also been fun and incredibly rewarding, due in no small part because of the great team and culture we've built to do this work. It started with a really solid foundation from the policy work done by Asher Davidson and Jim Palmer. It was then picked up very ably by the VBO team, David Elliott, Ange Taylor, Angela Lond, Kat Mortensen, Ray White, Danny McClure, Joe Fergus, and earlier in the process, Tyler McDonald and Josh O'Shea. We could not have done the work without our incredible consultant partners, John Reid, who has led our valuation work, our independent advisory panel, Jeff Ray and Vicky Lawson, and the property group team, Gareth Nicol, Craig Sampson, Rebecca McKenzie, Louise Hawthorne, Campbell Johnston, and the team at Willis Legal. Finally, I want to give a huge shout out to the large number of people across council who have lent their support to the work. It really was a full council effort and we couldn't have done it without you. Jess Naswar, Michael Weary, Regan Smith, Miranda Welch, Rachel Whitworth, Annie Quinn-Liven, Sam Hayes, Craig Cameron, and of course Big Boss Man, Nigel Bickle. A huge thank you everyone, you are all absolute stars.
Tēnā koutou. My name is Kat Mortensen. I'm a Cat 3 connector with the buyout office. I've always considered this mahi to be very privileged work. It's that privilege that ensured a genuine approach to our property owners, whilst upholding my professional responsibilities. I'm proud to have been part of the VBO whānau. Awesome bunch of people with purpose and compassion to complete the program. Ngā mihi nui.
Kia ora, I'm Ange Taylor and I'm part of the Voluntary Buyout Office, one of the connectors in the team. Just reflecting on the last 12 months, I feel really privileged to be part of this VBO project, supporting Cat 3 owners find a pathway forward with their lives beyond Cyclone Gabrielle, and particularly the substantial trauma they've experienced. Personally for me, it's been really challenging at times, navigating through the processes and just knowing that our ratepayers are actually funding half of the cost of the buyout versus supporting the 160 homeowners that were eligible for this project. But also rewarding as I've worked alongside these families in whānau by building up relationships and gaining their trust over time. We've watched them turn a corner from initially engaging with us in the first meeting where some felt council was to blame and we were taking away their land and their homes and everything they've got, and then just watching them find relief and show us gratitude for supporting them through their journey.
Kia ora koutou, my name's Craig Sampson of the Property Group, and we were engaged by both councils to help support them with the property aspects of the voluntary buyout program. TBG has been engaged by a number of requiring authorities and councils throughout the country to support with recovery projects in the past, and one of the common threads is that each project has its own unique set of circumstances and challenges. On reflection on this one of the things that worked really well was that we were asked to support and help with the processes and the templates used so that when the doors opened in October last year, we were able to hit the ground running. Personally, I would like to thank both Napier City and Hastings District Council for putting their trust and faith in us to help support them with this really important project. Thank you.
Oh, hi, look, I think we should all just be incredibly proud of the work that we've achieved, that Council has achieved. We were given a complex and difficult task, and this organisation has shown that we can take a difficult task on and do something new well. I've been privileged to work with the team over here in the VBO whose professionalism, whose adaptability, whose patience, and most of all, compassion has allowed this program to proceed so well. At the end of the day, this work that we've done in this office, we hope the work we've done, underpinned by the generosity of the people of Hawke's Bay, has in some small measure allowed people most adversely affected by the cyclone to move from the darkness and shadows of adversity and step forward into the brightness of a brighter future.
So just a couple of comments from me, if I can, Chair. As Chief Executive, I mean, it's interesting reflecting back, and some of you will remember being in Christchurch for the Local Government New Zealand conference in 2023. I think that was the 28th of July, and we were busy negotiating with with the Crown the initial $500 million funding package across voluntary buyouts and flood protection and transport. And I just want to start by firstly acknowledging you as the governance table. You know, when you kind of think back to that period, it's kind of pretty insane now. And you think, okay, well, we kind of had a kind of broad funding agreement then in the space of, I think it was 3 weeks, the decision for the council to go out to the community with an amendment to a long-term plan that usually takes months, and we did that in 3 weeks with a voluntary buyout policy. You know, it was you as the governance table that I think the most important thing before we got into anything technical was actually you doing that work with Jim Palmer about what did success look like. And it wasn't about the technical stuff, it was about how you wanted our community to be engaged with. And so all of those principles about fairness, being treated with care, being with empathy, those were the things that set the tone. And my reflection is simply, well, a couple of things. One, you know, as chief executives tend to do, being all involved in the macro negotiation. Craig Cameron said to me one night late as we were heading off, probably should start turning our mind to how this might actually work in practice, and very good decision to engage Jim Palmer and Asher Davidson to help frame some of that policy work. And I'm just delighted that within the space of a year, I mean, pretty optimistic, I think, in terms of the aspirations we had for helping our most affected move on. But a year ago when we opened the VBO, if someone said, like, within a year, there'll be a 90-something% engagement rate, most people will buy out, all of it will be done in a year, most of the demolition by Demolition Danny will be completed by Christmas, I would have thought that would have been a bit of a stretch. So I just want to actually acknowledge David, Gus, Craig, everyone that's been mentioned. It has been a team effort, but I think it came from the right place of what were the objectives we had for assisting our most impacted residents from Cyclone Gabrielle, and just incredibly. I think it's something we can be collectively pretty proud of in terms of both the policy, but the way that it's actually been implemented over the course of the last 13, 14 months. So I just want to record my congratulations to everyone that's been involved, and a special shout out to the connectors. I mean, I think day in, day out, the work that you've done with our impacted homeowners, and the care that you've demonstrated to people who can't even begin to imagine some of the trauma that they've been dealing with since February 2023. So, grateful to everyone, but just really want to acknowledge the connectors because, you've been dealing with this day in, day out, every single day, and really appreciate, your mahi, but the way that you've gone about it and the care that you've shown people. And, it's pretty, as you say, it's a privilege. We get to see every now and again a bit of an insight into that. I know at a recent meeting with our government partners, we shared a video from Al, the dog man of Pakuwhai, and Al's been so open with his journey with the community. But for me, when I reflect on that, I met Al, I think, a couple of weeks after the cyclone, in tears myself at the end of the first meeting with Al, as he described sitting on his roof and watching all of his animals die and thinking he was going to die. Been very open about the fact that he tried to end his life. To see him now through a voluntary buyout process that wasn't straightforward, that had to have the application of special circumstances policy, and to be in a space where, and that's just one individual, and they're all individual stories, but I'm just incredibly, proud of the work that's been done. But at the heart of it, it was about genuinely providing pathways for the most impacted people to be able to have choices to move on with their life, and that was what sat at the heart of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bickle. And before Mr. Elliott, I give you another opportunity to speak. I do want to acknowledge the VBO office team who are here today and those who can't be here for your mahi, and also your warmth and welcoming people who came to visit too. My big takeaway from visiting you was your motto, I guess, which is "This is the way." And I thought that was a really great way of moving forward, as well as a nod to Star Wars, which I love. But before we move on, Mr. Elliott, and just ask you for some final comments, I do want to take this opportunity as well to say that this program has been arguably the most significant initiative that we've had to roll out as part of our cyclone recovery. It's been the pathway for families to move forward, and all of the people who have played a role in that should leave this process with their heads held very high. I want to acknowledge, and I will steal some of Kat's words from that presentation, the privileged work that you have all done, that you have completed with professionalism, compassion, and a dedication to everyone in what is a really complex and sensitive process. Your work has ensured fairness for all affected parties, not just those who are directly affected by the cyclone, but also our ratepayers. And on behalf of the community and this committee, I'd like to extend our thanks to you. And in that light, I'd like to formalise that thanks. So I will be moving an amendment to the recommendations, which I have kindly previously supplied to Democratic support. That amendment is a new F, that the Strategy and Recovery Committee formally acknowledges and records its gratitude to all the staff, contractors and project team members involved in the voluntary buyout program for their professionalism and dedication to ensuring fairness throughout the process. The committee also extends its thanks to the affected community for their resilience and engagement during this challenging time. So while you take a moment to digest that, I would like to hand over to Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not much more to add, really. I was neglectful in my thanks because I saw it's hard to miss him sometimes, but Danny did sneak in and sat over hiding behind the councillor. So big thanks to Danny as well, who has contributed immensely, not just to the demolition, but also dealing with property owners and helping them. And in no small measure, it's the relationship he has with the demolition companies which has allowed us to make some significant savings. So thank you, Danny. Apart from that, I'm happy if everybody's taken the paper as read, and if you do have questions, I'll just remind everybody that there is a lot of still confidentiality around a lot of the stuff that took place in the VBO with offers and personal information, so some answers may be generalised, but otherwise happy to take questions.
Thank you for crafting that recommendation, Madam Chair, but I mean, we need to acknowledge on behalf of our table the enormity of this work, and because right at the beginning, and it's very, very moving for us to hear today and to see your video But at the beginning, when we were shut in, the region's leaders were shut into a room with the Minister of the Crown, and we were heard those words that we needed to pay half of voluntary buyout. It was a very, very big pill to swallow, and it was a very difficult pill to swallow because we had to then negotiate every other part of our recovery for both Heretitonga Hastings and the wider region. But the VBO office has been an extraordinary success, and I thank you, David, Gus, and all your amazing team here and your mahi for your empathy, most importantly, your kindness, but also your skills and expertise, which we know when you came on board you had. But not everybody has that natural ability to work with people and try and find and reach an outcome. And that's what you have achieved for our people. And we see them all the time. There are many, we're 165, 164. We see them, we talk to them all the time. We go into Pakowhai, we go into Dartmoor, we go into all of our areas, ESC, and hear those who've been through the process. And to hear that they have moved on with their lives successfully, within a very short time. And I'd just like to point out that the time they weren't ready, that was the hardest part. So, you know, while their lives were in turmoil and tipped upside down, and all of a sudden they were being asked to go into a category 3 and to be moved on to away from their place, which was in some cases they'd lived there for 5 generations. So to manage that, and each and every one of you, our huge gratitude to you, because you managed that and you allowed us to be able to help those families. We will see them forever, and they'll come up to us in the street and talk to us about what is happening in their lives now, where they live, and what their new community feels and looks like, because it's about those people that we did this for. And while we had the policy, while we had everybody helping get through and get this done, the burden on our ratepayer is huge, the burden on the community is huge, but we did our best, and I can just congratulate each and every one of you, because you have helped those people through this very, very difficult time, and we're grateful. We're hugely grateful for your support. So, ngā mihi nui, kia ora.
Beautifully said. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate F and the inclusion of F, and based on what Mayor Sandra just raised, I do or would like to see something in there that is reflected in the contribution of the general ratepayer. I think it is really important because, we had to go out to special consultation around that 50 million, and, we still get people that talk to us in the opposite way, why did we and stuff. So I think it's really important that that in some way is reflected in F. Thank you.
I think that's an excellent idea, and if we're able to craft up something suitable, Councillor Harvey, would you be happy to second? Thank you. Councillor Baddoe.
Can't add much to the wonderful words that have been said about the team. It's huge effort, and it's been lovely to visit, see how it's going, and understand perspectives. You don't need to look far around the country to see how this could have gone differently. And I think that is the huge success of this, is that you've led the way. This has gone differently in the past and is going differently around the country at the moment. And finally, I just want to thank you for the paper. It was genuinely interesting to read the lessons learned, and I'm sure there'll be a bit of work to see how to apply those lessons across other things that we do into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Baddoe. Right, I'll give the team a moment to finish crafting up that additional amendment. Thank you, team, for those amended recommendations. Councillor Harvey?
I couldn't have written it any better.
No.
Thanks for that, Craig. I just wonder whether, I understand the underwritten, but it is a contribution, and I would probably rather see it being a contribution, and I would also possibly have it say who have and will financially contribute, because it is ongoing.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. And just from a personal perspective, I particularly like the line around emotionally and socially as well. I recall during our consultation around whether or not we should participate in this, spending some time out in Flaxmere, and one woman in particular telling me how it is a challenging time right now, but we just have to support our community. And I think that says a lot about our community as a whole. Excellent. I hope everyone's now had an opportunity to read those amendments. They've been moved and seconded by myself and Councillor Harvey. I will invite any debate or comments, although we do have quite a few further items to go through, so I would like to keep it concise. No further comments. Excellent. I will put the motion. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried, and our sincerest thanks to the VBO team for all of your mahi. Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to item 7, and I'll invite Ms Green to come forward. Or no, I have a stand-in. Please come forward. Councillors are reminded that this examines how we can enhance our governance to better support our local alcohol policy and address key community needs. Before we carry on though, I will just quickly come to Councillor Corbin.
Conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Corbin, noting that you're stepping away from the table. Councillor Montepero Hendry.
Conflict of interest.
Thank you for declaring that, and noting that you're stepping away from the table also. All right, if you'd like to get us underway.
Good morning all, councillors. I'm Tony Stothard, Team Leader for Environmental Health and Alcohol Licensing, just standing in for Janine Green. The purpose of the report, I take the report as read, is to approve the establishment of a joint working reference group as part of the local alcohol policy review program, as just a following up on a resolution that council previously made in relation to this issue. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions regarding this particular item, although I acknowledge we have somewhat traversed it at length? Councillor Kerr.
At what point will the councillors or the members of this governance group be appointed? Is that something that will happen? You're expecting names today? If so, I'm not putting my name forward. But yeah, just wondering around the timing of that.
I'll allow you to answer if you'd like to. I'm not expecting names today, as I understand it. No.
Thank you.
All right.
Through you, Chair, I need to formalise a process though for those names. So while not today, I need to work with councillors to understand who's and what.
Absolutely, Mayor
Thank you.
Hazelhurst. I think we'll officially note that so that the team knows that they are to come through that process. But I have taken it as assumption, but I think you're right. We need to record it. Any other questions?
A lot of people.
Councillor Buddo.
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you for seconding Councillor Lawson. I'll now come to Councillor Uppertu.
I'll just check, please, that we're setting up a joint reference group, but we are going to have separate LAPs.
That's correct. The purpose of the group is that, like at an office level, Hastings and Napier working very closely together, and it could be, for example, that the draft LAPs are identical, and that would just come straight to a council workshop, and again, if they were identical, they could proceed out for consultations, but in developing those initial drafts, if there was some divergence, that would go to the reference group just to talk about those and then come to council workshop. So it's just really to make sure they're consistent as possible. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Cameron.
Through you, Madam Chair, so the process here is because once you have your draft plan, that'll go through the special consultative process. So this is a working group across two council staff and elected members to try and ensure that the drafting process of the LAPs has that consistency where appropriate, and formulating a good quality draft which will become what's known as your statement of proposal for your consultative process, and that'll come back to council because council has to adopt the draft LAP, and then you go out for consultation, and then you consider after that process whether you adopt your final LAP. So this is, you gave direction at your council meeting where you adopted to go into the review process for the LAP, that you just wanted some informal governance oversight, if you like, with the officers to just try and ensure that consistency of the drafting, which you'll approve the draft policy for. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Okay, if there's no further questions, we do have recommendations on page 38. Can I please have a mover? Oh, sorry, I have gone through that process. Thank you for reminding me. It's moved in second. Can I put that motion? All those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Thank you, Mr. Stoddart. Okay, we will now move on to item 18, and I would like to invite Ms. Sanders to join us. Sorry? 8, sorry. I just thought I'd move us on a little. Through the chair. So this was a paper or a submission that was put up to make it easier to build granny flats. The submission has already been made on behalf of council, and since this paper was written, there is an update. There has been a summary of submissions prepared on the submissions received. There was approximately 2,000 submissions, which is apparently a record number for building and construction consultation. So just in terms of a summary, I can circulate it if required, but just as a brief outline, councils were supportive of processes that make or deliver homes to communities. There was concerns across council about managing risks associated with lack of council oversight, a general support for fast-track processes over complete exemption. In terms of the Resource Management Act, there was concerns about the alignment with district plans. And then there was some mixed views around granny flats and whether or not building owners should contribute to the cost of infrastructure. In terms of Māori housing outcomes, there was general support for what was proposed, but potentially didn't address specific needs that Māori communities might have in terms of multiple dwellings. There was a request that there be some national direction around Papakainga and Maori land ownership structures. There was also some submissions around issues like natural hazards and dealing with infrastructure capacity, and what MB is proposing is obviously to take away all of these submissions and take those into account in developing any final policy. So any questions? Thank you. I'll open the floor for questions. No? Okay.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Anna, for a very, very good submission. I think you've captured the views of the top table, there are some serious concerns out there, particularly with our tradespeople, about what this legislation is going to mean, and the impacts on our infrastructure, actually, and also how we are able to rate for increased capacity on sites. So there's a heck of a lot of water to go under the bridge, excuse the pun, but in terms of putting in plumbing, electrical and those sorts of things, there are some serious concerns that I have heard from our trades. So I think that you've captured those very well. I still, through you, Bruce, understanding what that means for us in terms of, you know, extra capacity, and how we're going to look at that in the future in terms of a rating mechanism. That is still very unclear, but for us, you know, we have to think about that. That is extra impact on our waste management systems, our drinking water systems, and so, you know, that's very well for central government to make amendment to legislation to think they're making it easier for people, but actually we get left with trying to deal with the implications of our servicing. So I just want to table that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Hazelhurst. All right, I'm conscious of time, so I will direct committee members to the recommendations on page 47. Thank you, Councillor Baddoe. Thank you, Councillor Apatu. I will put the recommendations. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried, and thank you for the submission. If we can also note, please, in the minutes that we would like a action point that we would like a circulation of that summary, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move now on to item 9, and I'd like to welcome Mr. Palmer to join us up the front. Mr. Palmer will be giving us an update on the Biodiversity Hawke's Bay program and the work that's being done to protect and enhance biodiversity in our region, which, as we all know, is a really vital part of our district's environmental resilience. Welcome, team.
Tēnā koutou. Madam Chair, through I would like to take the report as read, and I'll move straight on into my presentation here. I thought I would just give a little bit of a brief summary just to define biodiversity, what it is and why it's important. Essentially, biodiversity is all of the living things that make up the world around us. They form intricate webs that we call ecosystems, and the healthier they are, then the healthier our environment is. And so it's really important to look after these things and support them. The goal of Biodiversity Hawke's Bay is to help that happen. Biodiversity Hawke's Bay themselves are made up as two parts. They are Biodiversity Hawke's Bay Incorporated and the trust, which is Biodiversity Hawke's Bay Trust. They are a regional organisation that helps to support the community to carry out their own activities in enhancing biodiversity within our region through a wide range of projects.
Mr. Palmer, I'm just conscious of time and that we have a few other items. So because many on this committee have funded Biodiversity Hawke's Bay in the past, they're aware of it. So if we could move on a little bit to some of the projects, that would be great.
Yep. No problem. This is just a small taster of some of the projects which they're currently supporting in our district. This is the Hamoana Tree Trust, where they are they're supporting the work for a lot of plantings along these waterways here to help support inanga and bird life through the area. This is part of a catchment that flows from hills to coast. The Maraetotra Tree Trust, again, is a very similar sort of campaign. Once again, removing exotic willow trees, fencing off, and a lot more planting. Kōlino Kiwi is run by Moose Cotting, who is
who has been doing a lot of trapping all around that region to really help create some Kiwi safe zones. And once again, large involvement with the community in these projects at the Tiawonga Downs. This is a particularly large project where a huge area of trees are going in, and this is also in partnership with businesses who are looking to offset their emissions through carbon sequestration as part of this project. I'll go to questions from there, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer, for being so concise given the time constraints. Do we have any questions for Mr. Palmer? Just a reminder that this paper has come through Strategy and Recovery because Eco District's work has been redirected through this committee to elevate its work, and this particular body of work is an environmental update. Coming now to Councillor Kerr.
Very quickly, the 35k a year, are we funding biodiversity's annual operating, or is that going more into the foundation?
They found it.
Or can come back to
Sorry. It's more into their operations, supporting their activities to fundraise and to.
Yeah. And just to note that there is an additional Hastings-based project, which is Tēnā Here Puketitiri Road, led by Tiffany Cottrell. That's also a Hastings project for 5,000. So that's great. Thank you, and I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Lawson.
I'm happy to second, but I do have a question. You asked for feedback on what information council would like, and I guess following on from Councillor Kerr, that information about where the 35,000 is going would be appreciated.
Yes.
Thank you, team. Okay, so we've got those questions. We've got a motion on the table with a mover and a seconder. I'll put that. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Okay, we'll now move on. Sorry, there are no minor or urgent items for discussion today, so we'll move past items 10 and 11. And we'll now move on to item 12, which is a recommendation to exclude the public from item 13. Mr. Cameron, can you please explain to us the reason for the proposed exclusion of the public?
Yes, through Madam Chair. So the next item is a general macro level update on Council's growth program and associated investments. Traverses some aspects of transactions and investments that are at this time appropriate to keep public excluded because they're commercially sensitive and they relate both to the business information and negotiation position of council and external parties. So for that collective of reasons, it's recommended appropriate at this time to hear the matter in public excluded.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Do we have any questions or concerns? No. Can I please have a mover and a seconder that we move into public excluded? Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Thank you, Councillor Nixon. Before we do cease our public live streaming, I would like to take a moment to thank the committee members again for all your work this year, but also in particular our staff. Particular thanks to Mr. Cameron, Mr. Ferguson and their teams. And thank you for your expertise, sacrifice and guidance this year. It has been a very busy year. And I'd like to acknowledge that Mr. Cameron has barely left chamber or his office working on reports. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge our democratic support team and in particular Ms. Cox, who has cracked the whip on many a meeting, and Ms. Hilton for your support as well. They are the dream team and they ensure these meetings run smoothly, so thank you both. To our community and everyone who was present here today, we wish you and your families a joyful, safe and restful festive season. We will now cease live streaming and move into public excluded.